I'm just going to reposition slightly now. And see if we can't get a bit of him while he is stationary. And also try it off. There's a whole network of aardvark burrows up and around us here. And we don't want to disappear into one of those. So I'm just going to have to reassess my routing. Oh, little prickly thorns popped up next to me there. I think he's just having a quick breather. It appears as if he's almost gone to sleep, sitting up. Excuse me. Oh, I know what's going on. I was very silly and didn't piece together the very simple puzzle here. But what he's interested in is the aardvark that he can probably smell or hear within the burrow in front of him. So what I'm going to do immediately is try and get us a little bit further away from this situation, because we don't want to interfere in any way. But you can see he's looking at a burrow at the base of the big green tree, so it's just a few meters from him, and as VM pans across, it's at the base of that green tree. It's difficult for you to see, but in there's a hole. Difficult to tell from your angle. And there you can see the leopard just a few meters away. And that explains exactly what he's doing. He wasn't having a sleep. And the interesting thing is, he's been known to sit for 24 hours outside an aardvark burrow, waiting for it to come out. But has waited a long time, and eventually he left after the aardvark didn't come out after the 24 hours. But he has also managed to catch either 4 or 5 aardvark in the last few months. So he's a very successful aardvark hunter. I think this is further enough away to let him do what he needs to do without us interfering. Now, like I've just said, he could be sitting here for a very, very long time waiting for this very bizarre animal to pop out of its burrow. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to find an aardvark in my book for you so that I can show you exactly what it is that he's hoping to snack on. It would be a large snack. They're quite big animals and have a bizarre pig-like snout that you're about to have a look at. The problem that he now faces is that this animal that we're looking at here is nocturnal. So in order for him to be able to catch it, he's going to have to wait a long time before it comes out, and that means that we're going to be stuck here with a very focused Tingana waiting for this interesting aardvark for the rest of the afternoon. I said they're nocturnal. I must correct myself. They are mainly nocturnal, and that's particularly within the Sabi Sands. In different areas, in drier desert areas, you may find them moving during the daylight hours. Ooh, sorry, Vian. Oh no, he's just laid down. He's just laid down. It looked like he was about to pounce, but as I just said, it's very unlikely that the aardvark would exit its burrow now, because usually in the Sabi Sands, it's only at the very later hours of the evening, at around 10 or 11 o'clock at night, that they apparently become active. The only aardvark I've seen in the Sabi Sands was one that this same leopard had killed. So I've never seen one live running around, and that's after spending a lot of time out here. And I guess, like I say, a lot of the time that I did spend here was during the daylight hours and not in the middle hours of the night when aardvark are most active. Well, good afternoon, Krista in Canada. And Krista would like to know whether leopard like to sleep on the ground or in trees. And it really does depend on the individual leopard and its scenario that it's in. Because if they're full-bellied, they would be more comfortable on the ground, whereas if they are empty stomachs, it would be more likely that they would be comfortable in a tree, but they usually are on the ground, Krista, I guess is the short story. If it's very hot, you may find that they will enjoy a cool breeze that they could find up in the branches of a marula tree, and or if they are hiding away from hyena and lion, which may be pestering them. So it does depend on the individual. Large. I don't think it's going to put up too much of a fight with Tingana, but it certainly would be a bit of a scuffle. Okay, well, we've already got an update through from Connie. Thanks very much for sending this through. And Connie tells me that it is possible for both cats and dogs to have siblings in one litter that have got different fathers. So that's news to me, and thanks very much, Connie. And I guess, Doug, that will therefore prove my guess. Now we're in a bit of a tough situation, because even though we know the aardvark isn't going to come out of its burrow now, we don't want to get too much closer to him. And he's looking very, very relaxed where he is. And there's great news, because James has found something else that is very interesting, and you're all going to enjoy. And there's another vehicle that's just arriving, so we're going to be able to make space, allow them to have a better look, and we'll still hang around you and see if he doesn't do anything. But for the meantime, enjoy James. We'll see you a bit later.
In fact, in the close company of a warthog, which I've never seen before. Fascinating to see. So he's just feeding quietly, and there are a few others off to what is basically the right of the screen, and they're all just kind of feeding to the very thick woodland, and they like the thick stuff in this wind, I think. He's picking, unusually, he's picking combretum leaves and eating them. Two kinds of combretum. He's been eating the tree that you've just seen him eating from, and then there's a big one to his left that he's been chewing on. Right, I'm just going to sneak forward. We'll probably get a better view. Young bull. I'm not sure why he's reacted. Isn't that brilliant? He's breaking down a buffalo thorn tree. Right, I'm going to try again, sneak forward a little bit here. Just get past this Dicrostacus bush. Come on, Jigger. We'll start the car. Let me get past this bush here. He's basically destroying a Ziziphus tree. For what reason I can't. I just want to try and see. He seems to be going for some of the roots. Is that right, Brian? He's just fossicking around at the bottom of the tree there. Yeah, he's pulling pieces out of the roots. Isn't that interesting? So what he's done is he's kicked the tree over and he's pulled basically a large piece of it out, and he's now pulling strands, little strips off the roots. Those little bits and pieces. Now let's see him do it again. That's rootstock. So he's pulling out the rootstock. So we had a lovely question earlier today about, I think from Pamela, about what elephants, how they change their diets as the winter progresses. And this elephant is now eating roots, very, carefully selecting for it. Those, the leaves of that tree are pretty nutritious, but the elephant very clearly rejecting them in favor of the root stock. That's really interesting. He is putting a little bit of very dry straw into his mouth. You won't doubt that he'll eat all of that dirt there. Yeah, rejected. I can just hear another one off to my right hand side. Otherwise it's pretty quiet in here. I don't think this is a very big herd. It might be. Now he's eating some sort of... He's eating a little bit of grass, which is not usual for this time of year. In summer, if they can, they'll graze almost exclusively. Now he's found something else, some other roots to try and get at. Magnificent little boulders. He's probably about 17 or 18 years old. Did you hear that? That's their little stomach rumble. Well, it's their larynx that makes it. It was just a wonderful sound. I find it so comforting to hear. And most of that communication is infrasonic. It's too low for our ears to even hear. Such a comforting sound. Sort of travels through your bones. You might just be able to hear the other one breaking trees off to the right. Much more tree breaking than would happen in summer. Brian, shall we just sneak a little bit forward and see if we can't see the other one? And try and work out if this is a decent sized herd or if it's just two of them. It might be two young bulls that have been tossed out of the herd. I suspect they're on the fringes of a herd though. Elephants also have a very distinctive smell. Like sort of leather and cheese, I suppose. Just going to check down in the drainage line. You can see one off there, Brian. You can just see one through there. Also another young animal, but younger than the other one. So we'll pop down into the drainage line and just see if we can't pick something up. Hello, Rudy in California. Interesting question, I've never been asked before. Have I ever ridden an elephant? Rudy, I have not ridden an elephant. Especially not an African one. You can do elephant back safaris out here. I think we're going to go back to that little one there if I can't find any evidence of others. So Rudy, you can do elephant back safaris in Botswana. You can do a few of them in South Africa too. The Botswana one called Abu Camp is the most famous. But I have never actually sat atop the great one. And it was with Viam, and they were in a beautiful drainage line. It was a stunning sighting, but there were two or three that were starting to hang back more and more from the herd, and I think that's what these two are. They're just about old enough to leave the herd, but not quite old enough to go out on their own. So they'll be a little bit nervous of being totally alone. So they'll be in audio contact with the rest of the herd and probably olfactory contact too. He's now sitting with it in the company of a fork-tailed drongo. Is this angle right? Those drongos are becoming more and more fascinating to me. The other day we were driving along looking for a leopard through the bush, thick bush, and we were followed by 2 or 3 drongos. And at one stage they were less than 2 feet from us, just trying to pick up the bits and pieces that we disturbed driving through the bush. And he'll be having a field day here as the elephant picks up those trees and knocks them, digs up the soil underneath and pulls up the roots. He's really getting in there. That old buffalo thorn's going to be lucky to survive this. And the thorns on that tree are something else. They would do some serious damage to your hands. If you were to stick your forehead in there and try and push it out the way, you'd come out with a fairly scarred head. And quite contrary to everything I told Patricia earlier today, sorry, not Patricia, Pamela, he is in fact eating grass. Very dry. I suspect it's probably a bit moister than some of the others because he's pushed it out from under the shade there, so he's very clearly selected for it. Yeah, I can see what kind it is now. It's something called red grass or Thermida triandra, and it's known to be very nutrient rich. Lots of protein in it. John boy, you want to know, are these the sort of outcast bulls or delinquent bulls? They're not quite delinquent yet. They could become delinquent, I suppose. For anybody who doesn't know, a delinquent bull is basically one that gets out from the herd or is about to leave the herd and starts to become a bit of a bully in the herd, and eventually the matriarch will toss him out because he starts to become a pain. He starts to try and mate with everybody, and he starts to, basically when he has his first must. But almost exactly like a human teenager who starts to throw his weight around when he's trying to find himself. And that's exactly what these elephants do. They don't necessarily become delinquent, because in a natural system like this there are lots of much older, bigger bulls, and he will be severely sort of disciplined to the point of death sometimes, where if he, for example, if this little elephant comes into a short must, they come into very short musts when they're about 20 years old. If he goes near a female and there's a big bull around, he'll get himself cleaned up. A big bull is probably 1,000 kilograms heavier than that animal we're looking at now. So he could become potentially delinquent, but because of this sort of system of discipline that they have with the big bulls around here, it's highly unlikely. Well, as he wanders off into the bush, I think what we're going to do is head into the glorious setting sun and go and see what those lions are up to at the moment. I suspect probably that they are lurking about on the ground asleep, but if they are going to move at all during this game drive, it'll be round about now. It's really, it's getting quite cool quite fast, and so let's go and have a look and see what they're doing. I'm just going to have to do another 180-degree turn. The sunset is starting to sink in a rather magnificent fashion. It's interesting, I can't hear the rest of the herd feeding at all. Just that one other, which is, it's quite odd. I'm sure the others are in here somewhere. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Elephant coming across here. We'll just quickly stop here and have a look. Fights him. He's a little bit nervous of us. Now, the fact that he's so nervous tells me that the rest of the herd is probably not around here. Alright, old fella. We'll just stop and let him calm down a bit. Oh, now I can hear the rest of the herd. They're off beyond him. There, you can hear them now. Alright, we're going to pop into the lions. We'll leave the elephants. While we're on our way
Welcome back, everyone, and what an afternoon it's been. Already we've seen some incredible stuff, and so happy that James managed to find some more elephants. He's managed to find a large herd this morning, as well as the bulls you've been looking at now. So really happy about that, because there haven't been many elephants around, I'm told, and even from looking at the bush and the different signs in the bush, I've seen that we haven't had many elephants around in this area for the last few weeks, and hopefully that changes in in the future, but for the time being, as long as James can keep finding the few that are here, that's good enough. Well, you've probably all been wondering what's going on with Tingana, and you can take a closer look. Not much has changed. Hasn't moved a muscle other than those controlling his ears, which he twitches from time to time. And he could be preparing himself for another 24-hour wait, which he has been known to do before, waiting for aardvark to exit their burrows, and it's hard to believe. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly certain it was a similar scenario to what's happened this afternoon that happened a few months ago, and vehicles were following him until he stumbled across some aardvark burrows, and then he lay down and waited there until all the game drive vehicles went home that night for dinner, and they came back in the morning and found him in the exactly same spots. Went home for breakfast, came back after lunch, for the afternoon drive, and he was still there, and only later that evening did he move off. I'm hoping he isn't put through that torture again, and hopefully the aardvark comes barreling out in the next 5 minutes, but it is highly unlikely. Like I said a little bit earlier, aardvark in this area are mainly nocturnal, so I've been told they like to come out of their burrows at around 10 or 11 p.m. So even this evening he has quite a long wait on the cards. And I must say a huge thank you to all of you that have done some research on the interesting topic of, is it possible for one mother to raise siblings in the same generation from different fathers? And the general consensus is that yes, different dogs and cats and animals, even humans, could potentially have brothers or sisters of the same age at the same birth time, but from different fathers. So that's something that I didn't know was possible, and it's really great that everyone joins in and helps gather all this information to share with us. And I can't tell you how grateful I am, because without all of you helping us out, it would be difficult to get to the bottom of some of these questions. So Doug, I think will also, on behalf of Doug, I'll say a big thank you to all of you who have helped us to get to the bottom of his question, and hugely surprised by that answer. I thought there's not a way that it's possible, but it just goes to show, with a bit of scratching around and a bit of research, you can be pleasantly surprised by what's going on. You may have heard some birds chattering a little few seconds ago. Those were red-billed woodhoopers that flew off into the distance, and there's not too much else going on here. The sun is slowly beginning to set over the western horizon, and probably in the next 5 minutes it will be gone. And what a beautiful sky it is out to the west this evening. I've just got another question through from Susan. Good evening, and good to have you along with us, Susan. Susan's interested to know, is it possible that the aardvark can smell Tingana and therefore wouldn't want to come out? And it certainly is possible. They've got really good senses of smell, Susan. So I'm guessing that there is a chance that it could smell the leopard. But I'm not entirely sure whether I can conclusively say yes, 100% it can. They do have very long snouts that are used to help them smell termites, which are often hidden deep below the ground, and then they use their massive claws to excavate into the termite mounds or burrows in order to feed on them. So they do have very powerful nostrils which help them detect their prey. but whether or not he'd be able to smell the leopard up there is a mystery. I'm guessing that 4 or 5 aardvark that have been killed by him in the future maybe didn't have a good sense of smell, or it wasn't necessarily that he was waiting for them outside their burrows when he caught them. He could have just stumbled upon them in the field as he was going about his evening business. It's incredible to see how he blends in as Vim zooms out. And Marcia's just asked us a question. Good evening, Marcia, and welcome on board with us. Marcia would like to know where exactly is the burrow in relation to where he's sitting now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you with my finger. It's just below this green tree over here. You can see a little bit of sand around the edge of the burrow, and the leopard's just a few meters to the left hand side, but there Vim's showing you quite clearly the sand which has been excavated from that burrow, and he's only a few meters away. It's not uncommon for leopard, especially male leopard, to lie in wait and ambush for their prey. They'll do the same thing on warthog burrows, which are often on in old termite mounds, and what the leopard will do is it'll lie on top of the termite mound waiting for the warthog to exit in the morning and try its best to pounce on them. I've seen a leopard try on several occasions but have yet to see a successful takedown using that approach, which just goes to show how quick the warthog bullets out of their burrow every morning. Another great question has just come through, and thanks for all the great questions that you are all sending through. And if we haven't answered your question, I do apologize, but it would be impossible to answer everyone's, so keep trying. Teresa would like to know, are the aardvark's burrows interconnected, or is it just one singular burrow down to where it's waiting? I'm actually not entirely sure, but I'm fairly certain there will be a network of burrows or tunnels that connect all these burrows together. As I was driving through this area initially, I did notice there was a lot more than one burrow. It's going to be difficult to show you, but in this area up ahead of us there's probably about 5 to 10 different burrows, and I'm fairly certain that there are different tunnels that interconnect them. You may have heard a loud squawking a few seconds ago. That was a lilac-breasted roller that was having an altercation with another lilac-breasted roller, and they've flown off, so we're not going to be able to show them to you, sadly, but they were just in the marula tree above us. Oh, I think he's lifted up his head ever so slightly, so let's take a closer look. You can see he's poised and focused. I'm not sure if it's possible for him to hear the aardvark down there. I think it is. And even though it could be a few meters below the ground, that may be what has got Tingana, this beautiful big male leopard's, attention. While we sit and wait and watch him patiently hunting an aardvark, it's interesting where we are positioned on Arethusa at the moment, because we're on the kind of southwestern boundary of the area where we're allowed on Arethusa, and this is the area where I believe that Tingana has sometime had some interactions with the Anderson male, which is another slightly younger male leopard who's up and coming. And they've been seen pacing alongside one another, sizing one another up vocalizing. They haven't come to blows yet, but it certainly could get to that point at any given stage. But what that behavior has caused, the interactions between the Anderson male, who appears to be pushing further north into Arethusa, is that it means that Tingana has started pushing further east in towards Djuma, and that means he's putting further pressure on Mvula, who's slightly older than him. So it's a kind of a chain reaction that's we're busy experiencing, or that these leopard are experiencing. Sadly, we haven't got to share any of it with you. It's all intelligence that the other rangers have shared with us. But some interesting dynamics, and interesting to see him this far south and west, closer to where Anderson does his business. Now, as much as I would love to try and position the vehicle a little bit closer for us to get a closer view of him, it's littered with aardvark burrows, and we don't want to interfere or impact on what's going on, and by driving the vehicles much closer, it could mean that we are going to make the aardvark not come out the burrow as early as it maybe would this evening, and that way we'd be disadvantaging Tingana. So we're trying to stand by as far as we can, and all of the vehicles who are in the sighting, and there are another 2 vehicles alongside us here, are all standing by a comfortable distance away, not putting too much pressure, mainly on the aardvark. The leopard doesn't mind about us, thankfully, but we don't want to push the boundaries too much and interfere with what's going on. I think that is possible, Mariana, although I'm more inclined to think that he can hear the aardvark rustling about, and that's what's causing him to gain focus or increase his focus on that area. So that's my guess. For him to feel the vibrations through all that earth would mean the aardvark would really have to be thumping around in there. So I think it's more the very acute hearing that's alerting to Tingana to the fact that there is an aardvark down that burrow. Possibly he was here early hours of this morning after spending time here last night, or even maybe just the sense of smell has alerted to him to the fact that the aardvark could also be in that specific burrow of the many tunnels and networks of burrows that are in this area in front of us. Well, as you can all see, he's still fast asleep and patiently waiting for this aardvark to hopefully come running out of the hole. And we've just got a question from Matty at the Dayton's Children's Hospital. Good to have you with us again, and glad to know that you're watching. Matty's interested to know whether it's possible that the aardvark would put up a fight and try and stop Tingana from catching it. And that's a very good question, Matty, because the aardvarks are quite big animals, almost a similar weight, not quite as heavy as he is, but nearly as big as he is, and they've got very, very long claws that they use for digging. So they do have some weapons, but sadly I don't think they really use them too much. I think they get such a big fright when the leopard jumps on them that they probably don't fight too much. But then again, I could be wrong. It's very rare for us to see leopards catching aardvark, and I don't think it's ever been filmed before, so there's not too much that's known about that. But the aardvark could maybe kick with their feet and try and scratch the leopard with its very long claws, but I don't think it's going to put up too much of a fight. Even though it's quite a big animal, Tingana and other leopard are too strong and too quick for the aardvark. But good to know that you're watching, Natty, and I hope everything's well with you and all of your friends, and we'll see you again soon. Oh, these questions are streaming in, and thank you again for sending them through. We've just got one from Susan. Good evening and welcome. Susan is interested to know, what noise will an aardvark make? That is a very good question. As far as I'm aware, they don't make too much noise, and I've never heard of an aardvark audio. Now, I've just got my book out. It's not a very in-depth book, but it's not saying anything about them making noises. So I'm going to ask you, or any of you who may be interested in knowing what noise this makes, to try and find out what noise the aardvark will make. And if you're battling to find the spelling of aardvark, it's the first word in the dictionary, so that should help you with the spelling. And it would be very interesting to know if they do make a noise. If they're in distress, I'm guessing they could let off a squeal, but they may not necessarily. But in terms of communicating with other aardvark, I also don't know of any audio that they may make. So thanks, Susan, for asking that question, because hopefully sooner rather than later we'll all know the answer to it. Sadly, though, I am not going to be the one to provide you with that correct answer, as I am not entirely sure. Look at him. You can see how his ears prick up, and there's something that's exciting him down there. Wouldn't it be incredible to know what he's hearing? We know that he's very hungry, and for those of you who may have joined the show more recently, we did initially follow him when he was on the move, and we could see that he was certainly very keen for a meal. And like my father always tells me, the taste of food is relative to your hunger, and because he's looking very hungry, that aardvark must be seeming extra tasty. Well, folks, we don't plan on going anywhere, but it sounds like James may have got himself into another favourable position and has got something that he would like to show you. We, like I say, aren't going to go anywhere, and I'm hoping that we're going to have some answers for you about that aardvark question, Susan, and all of you when we get back. We'll see you in a moment. Over to James. Go ahead.
Hello everybody. As you can see, we've come to see how the lions are doing. They're extremely well fed from last night. I suspect they ate something pretty large, perhaps sort of kudu sized. I don't think they'll do a huge amount today, but I thought it was very disrespectful of me not to come and have a little look and see them. They might be doing nothing, but they are still magnificent lions. Look at that. Especially with the autumn colours all around, or winter colours all around. Beautiful. Fat bellies. 10 or 15 minutes and they've done really very little at all except lie there and roll over every so often, because obviously one side of the fat belly gets a bit sore than the others. And you can see them all panting, and as I've said before, I think that has something to do with the fact that the stomach is actually pushing up against the diaphragm and the rib cage, which makes it, the lung cavity, chest cavity, probably a bit smaller than it is normally, so it's not very easy to breathe. But I'm sure the increased oxygen flow I think the increased oxygen flow to the stomach also aids in a bit speedier digestion. Now, while we look at these lions, I seem to have unleashed something of a hornet's nest on Twitter from the very concerned and conservation-wise people who watch this show, and we're very grateful for your comments, I must say. I just want to clarify something. I mentioned that there are operations where you can ride elephants in South Africa. I am not somebody who necessarily agrees with that at all, except in cases where there are orphaned elephants who cannot be reintroduced back into the wild, and where people can have on-foot walking experiences with such elephants. I feel that the conservation benefit probably outweighs the sort of the negative thing of having a few elephants in captivity in a large space. So they're not in zoos at all. I'm not an advocate for taking wild elephants into captivity and putting them on and teaching and chaining them up and bringing in a mahout to train them to so you can ride them. I'm really not advocating that for 1 second. I think that there are some organizations in Zimbabwe and in Zambia, certainly where they have, and Botswana, where they've taken a few orphaned elephants, and the orphans have managed to sort of pay for themselves, if you like, through doing on-foot experiences with people, and the benefits, the healing benefits. We often talk about the healing benefits that horses have on people. The healing benefits that those elephants have had on people have been profound. So, please don't think that I'm advocating that people should ride elephants as a matter of course, take them out of the wild and chain them today. But let's just see for a while. It's starting to get pretty chilly, so they may go for a walk later on. But I don't think they're going to do a huge amount. So if Tingana does anything exciting, we'll go straight back to him. But let's just enjoy the company of these magnificent African hunters and the lovely winter colors that are surrounding them. Cecilia, you say that you know I'm here to catch a glimpse of me friend Orange Eyes. Now, for those of you who don't know, there is a lioness in this group who has got much more orange eyes than the others. And the other day, she fetched up about 2 feet from the end of my vehicle and was staring me in the eyes to the extent that I thought, well, I might have to bang on the vehicle just to make her back off a bit. She looked like she might come over for a closer inspection. So I would like to see her. Yes, thank you, Cecilia. She's not the best looking lioness in the group. She's a bit short, she's quite stocky, but she's got lovely orange eyes. And you can see that spotting. The other day we were chatting about the spots on the cubs and how they will fade. And you can see how some of these lions have maintained some spots. Hello, Samuel. A lovely question. You've asked, will these cats suffer some of the same troubles that domestic cats will? Samuel, they definitely do. They get things like FIV, which is the feline immunovirus, a bit like HIV in humans. In cats you can inoculate against it, but obviously we don't do that here. These lions can get that apparently. It's more common, however, in domestic cats. Then you say that your cat's got a gammy knee, perhaps from a cancerous growth, and would these lions get it? Samuel, I think what you'll find is that a lot of these cats, because of their wild, unlike domestic cats, they often have a slightly wider genetic pool. So where cat breeds, for example, Siamese or Burmese or Persian cats, tend to have a fairly narrow genetic pool, which makes them susceptible to diseases like cancers, and it makes them susceptible to joint problems, and they don't live nearly as long, for example, as cats that are even tabby cats or African wild cats who might fall into captivity. So, nice question, Samuel. I don't think many of the diseases would be the same. Certainly, they'd be more similar in felis cats. Those are the caracals and servals. This is a different genus from your house cat, although it's the same family. But I know that FIV is one of the things that can affect wild lions as well as domestic cats. You can just feel a chill in the air starting to run down the drainage line that we're in now. Little fingers are starting to stretch their way around. Not that this fat lot have seemed to feel it at all. Totally at peace. See something there on the chest of that lion. I wonder if it's not an injury. I'm looking with my powerful binoculars. Brian, what do you think? I think it's a leaf.
I'm not too sure.
Or some muck. No, it's not an injury. It looks like it's probably actually distressingly a bit of whatever they ate last night that has congealed on the fur. Difficult to get to fur on the chest there. Yeah, no, I don't think that's anything particularly astonishing. So we'll just put on the light and see. And so I'm not going to shine directly. Well, I probably can shine directly on them because they're so asleep. They're not going to be doing anything. Some of them have got a bit of red around the neck, but mostly I think they've cleaned up pretty well after the hunt last night. Certainly the last time we saw them, they'd just been at a carcass. The last time I saw them, they'd just been at a carcass, and they had red all over them. And they set about cleaning themselves pretty quickly after they went into the shade to rest. And I think these guys have done most of their grooming. Hello, Angela in Boston. Really nice little observation you've made there of the spots. Now, those spots are remnants of when the cats were babies. So when they're babies, and I don't know if you were with us yesterday, Angela, you would have seen the cubs have got lots and lots of spots. They actually look almost, not quite, but almost like little leopard cubs. And then as they grow up, those spots disappear, but they remain normally on the belly sometimes, or on the inner front leg, just like that one's got. There are a couple in this pride that have got more spotting than others. So the one we're looking at now is pretty spotty underneath. Junior, the male, is much less spotty. And I think that's just a sort of remnant. You know, so some of them will remain more spotty than others. Now that noise behind us is some kind of animal alarm calling. It's a drongo. It's a drongo doing a very bad impression of a rattling stickler. So the spots, quite interestingly, are the reason they disappear is that lions are not typically sort of thick bush hunters. So they hunt quite a lot in the long grass and the savannas, and those spots become more of a hindrance when they hunt like that. That's a leaf there that looks like a bit of blood. So it becomes more of a hindrance when you're out in the open, because with the spots there's quite a lot of white and black and contrasting colors which become easy to see for the predators. Now for a leopard, which is much smaller and tends to hunt from very concealed positions and is much shorter than these, so it tends to hunt from more dappled light, the spots remain an advantage. Whereas as a lion gets bigger and they hunt in these big prides that need to move through the kind of tawny grass of the savannas, this is a much better color for them to be. And the two sub-adults here, that's one there, I think, Brian, and the other one off to the right of Junior there. But that one there, you can see how fat the belly is, but there's not a lot of condition on that lion. You could see the hip bone sticking out, and I'm hoping that this big feed at least will put a little bit of condition onto both of them. They're both, to me, look pretty ropey. And that's either from, remember, they will, since they've turned a year, they will be fighting entirely on their own at the kills, so they will eat whatever the scraps are. And so these lions are not killing something big fairly regularly. Those two youngsters will suffer. They also seem to have those rather distinctive and rather distressing bobbles that indicate bovine tuberculosis on their elbows. You can see one there just in the middle of the frame. And that won't be a problem if they can maintain a decent nutritional status. But if they start to get really hungry and they start to lose sort of nutritional condition, then they are going to struggle. That TB will harm them. It's not easy being a lion until you get to sort of Junior's size where you can monopolize anything you want. But even Junior now is going to have trouble because Hi, John Boy. A bit of question here on what they ate last night, and has there been any confirmation? I'm afraid, John Boy, there hasn't been any confirmation of what they've eaten. I'm really not sure what on earth they had. I suspect, because there's nothing left, I suspect quite strongly that it was probably something the size of a wildebeest, or maybe a small zebra or a decent sized kudu. and I'd go with something about that size. I think there doesn't seem to be anything left. So if it was a full-size zebra, or if it was a full-size buffalo, they'd definitely still be on it, lurking around the sort of smelly entrails, if you like. But they definitely finished whatever it was. And the possibility with a bigger prey animal would have been that it was something like a buffalo and they were chased off by hyena. I haven't seen sufficient numbers of hyenas that could chase off a pride this size. So, yeah, let's go with possibly wildebeest-sized animal, possibly kudu-sized, possibly small zebra-sized. That's what I'd go with. About 100, maybe 150 kilograms of meat. Now, just to keep you updated on Tingana, nothing untoward or exciting has happened. Scott has had to leave the sighting briefly to let some other people in, but he's still in the area and just keeping tabs on exactly what's going on. So we'll sit with these lions a bit longer and just make sure they don't do anything astonishing. I find some of the best times I've had in the bush have been just waiting, and it tends to be what happened. Hello, Gracie at Dayton Children's Hospital. Gracie, you want to know if the little lions ate too. Gracie, I'm afraid I don't. They did eat. They definitely ate quite a lot last night, but they don't always eat, Gracie. Sometimes I'm a bit worried that they don't get enough, and that, as you say, Junior eats all the food. And I think Junior does a lot of eating of all the food. You can see he's a very fat lump. That's the youngster we're looking at now, Gracie. And you can see a big fat belly, which is pretty full, but they don't always get to eat so much. And there's Fat Junior. Look at him with his big fat belly. He's sleeping very soundly. He's turning into quite a tall lion. He's quite a good-looking chap. And when his beard falls out, I suspect he'll be a fairly magnificent animal. Hello, Tammy and Jean. I think you're faithful Zoomies who operate the waterhole camera at Djuma Waterhole, and you want to know how close by are they to the waterhole, so if you can keep an eye out for them during the course of our night. Tammy and Jean in North Carolina, they are pretty close by. They're only about, I'd say 250 meters, or say 600 feet to the south of the dam, and they do like to have water when they've eaten. I know they have drunk today, but it's possible they'll go back and have a drink a little bit later on. So keep an eye out. You may well find that they come and have a drink a bit later on. Hello, Dylan, with your auntie Savannah. You're age 10, a budding young naturalist. It's wonderful to have you along. Thank you for your question. Good question. Do lions sleep more in the winter time when it's colder than they do in the summer when it's hotter? Now, Dylan, what you need to ask yourself is, does getting cool take more energy than getting warm takes? And I think that you'll find that getting cool takes less energy than getting warm. And so what that probably means is that they will sleep more when they need to use a bit more energy. So they probably sleep a little bit more during the winter. It doesn't, remember here that the temperatures don't fluctuate that greatly. And they tend to, I mean, the other factor, of course, Dylan, is that when it's very hot, it's just easier to lie down in the shade. While you're not using any energy to get cool, it's definitely a good way of not getting hot if you don't move. So there are reasons to move and sleep at both times of the year, but I haven't noticed any real difference in how they move, except to say that in the early mornings in summer, I find the cat viewings much better. They tend to like the warmer mornings than they do the freezing mornings. They tend to be hiding up somewhere when it's really cold on the cold winter mornings. Nice question. Thanks, Dylan. They are so sound asleep. Now what you can hear there is a whole lot of drongos starting to call, and they often call this time of the day. And you can hear a couple of thrushes calling away into the drainage line, but it's these drongos that really, when the sun just is about to get dark, they start to yell, and I think they're now shouting at the lions as if to say, what on earth are you doing here, and why don't you go away? And one of them is about to sit on Brian's shoulder, I think. And I'm just going to shine the light there and see if I can't see him. No, I can't. No. Definitely alarm calling with all sorts of different alarm calls, doing a rattling testicular, doing a shrike call, doing all sorts of different calls. They are amazing, the drongos, the way they do that. And the other sounds you can hear, a couple of real thrushes, not just the drongos messing them around in the drainage line. And otherwise it's getting pretty quiet out here. Hello, Ron in Scotland. You want to know a bit more about the TB in lions, and can anything be done about it? And, you know, what's the sort of, what are the difficulties? What's the status of what's going on? Ron, for many years now, there's been a lot of fear about what TB was doing to lions and how the lion populations of the Kruger National Park were going to crash, and there was great terror and wailing and gnashing of teeth. Ron, what's happened is we don't think that it has had a significant effect on lion populations. It's been around for at least 15 years, probably 20 years now. There are probably as many lions as there were before. There are people who will disagree and say that we're staring down the barrel of a population decline of epic proportions. I don't believe it, because it's been 20 years at least that they've had the disease. Ron, what it does do, though, just like as with those youngsters, is that if they are nutritionally deficient, if they are struggling in some way, then the disease can affect them and can take them. I think it maybe knocks maybe a year off the top end of their lives, but I don't believe that it has a significant effect on the lion numbers at the moment. So Ron, and is there anything we can do about it? There isn't really, you know. I mean, I think you can probably vaccinate some of the buffalo outside of this zone, But there are so many buffalo and so many lions in the Kruger, I mean, it's essentially an open system, then that to be able to do anything about it, other than research it and make sure that it isn't actually creating a major... So basically you'd have to inoculate every single one in the whole Kruger Park in order to rid them of it, and that would be almost impossible because, you know, if you missed one, they would then become the carrier for the whole new next explosion. And then with the buffalo, the only thing you could do would be to cull them all, and that's not an option because there are more than sort of 17,000 of them in the Kruger Park, and it's just not necessary. We don't think it's having as much of an effect on them as a lot of people have said. Thanks, Ron. It is a difficult one, and there's still lots of ongoing research. There is one station on site here. You'll see the lights just come south on the road, and you can come in. I know that a lot of you are very concerned about a Manyeleti lioness that was put down the other day, and you've made comments about, you know, or ask questions about, do we interfere with nature, and what was the story, and what are the circumstances under which that happened. I think the basic approach has become slightly more humane almost, where if a lion or an animal is in such clear distress that they're obviously not going to recover, instead of letting nature take its course, which can often be very cruel, the decision will be taken to euthanize an animal. And in that case, I believe the Manyeleti female lion's back had been broken, unlike Junior's, which is in fine fettle after his meal last night. And so the kindest thing to do was to euthanize her. You can't fix an injury like that. And remember, often, probably won't film that, that'll be disgusting. Remember that the difficulty is that with these lions, so for example, let's say we found one of these lions here with an injury that we could fix. If we took them out, we could dart them and we could take them. Good heavens, that's I'm afraid something has not agreed with Junior's bowels last night, and he's in some spot of bother just to the right of us. I suspect we're going to be enveloped in an acidic cloud fairly soon. Just remember that let's pretend the lionesses we've been looking at have got injured, we could dart them, we could take a lioness out of commission, if you like. We could take her away and put her in a veterinary or rehabilitation center, but to put her back into the wild then would be almost impossible. So it's really quite crucial that I think we have to limit our interaction. From my personal point of view is that if it's an endangered animal, we should do everything we can to try and solve the problem and reintroduce them to the wild. So certainly with cheetah and wild dogs, that's what I would do. If it's something like a leopard, maybe also try something like that. Lions, the chances of reintroduction to the wild, even with leopards, are so small that your choice is either you euthanize, either you let nature take its course, or you put them into a rehabilitation center, which is, maybe it has its merits, and sometimes it would be kinder just to put them down. So to my mind, the most kind thing to do is to, if an animal is beyond help, is to just put them down. We're going to go across to Scott. I think he's still with the leopard, I'm not sure, and we may or may not see you later, but it's been a wonderful lion sighting, and thank you for all your questions.
Well, the timing couldn't have been any better, folks. He has literally just got up in the last few seconds, and unlike his previous scenarios where he has sometimes waited up to 24 hours for aardvark, he has only spent about an hour here this evening before the urge to find some other food has overwhelmed him. And aren't we lucky, folks? Oh, sorry. And it looks like he's going to continue to scent mark. Watch closely here. There we go. 2 or 3 little squirts, and that's all that's required. And they'll do that every 100 meters or so. And there's 2 other vehicles here with us, so you can hear they've just started up their engines. And we are going to do the same thing right now, as he's just disappeared out of shot. And let's see what he gets up to. Well, what I'm actually thinking is that we may leave him and these other vehicles, because it's not going to be easy for all 3 of us to follow him without interfering too much in what goes on. And I've just heard some other vehicles come onto the radio expressing interest in joining this sighting. So I think let's just see what happens. Maybe we can try and spend a bit longer. No, the second vehicle's also planning on staying along with him. So with the short time that we've got left, I don't think it is going to be worth our while continuing following him. But let's just see what happens. We may get another glimpse, but I'm guessing that we will not. What an afternoon it's been, an afternoon filled with big cats, and it's not always like that. So if it's your first Safari Live experience, you chose a good day to start. Not only the Nkuhuma pride that James has been spending time with, but also this beautiful big male leopard. And like I say, it's one of my favorite things, spending time with leopard, especially the big males. And earlier on we were lucky enough to even follow him on the move. Just going to get on the radio and let the guys know that I am going to make space, because we have spent longer than your general period of time that you would normally spend with a leopard. And it looks like they may have... Oh no, he's still in the road. The vehicle's just trying to loop ahead to get his guests some frontal views. So we'll have one last view of him. I'm just going to switch. Oh, we've caught him at an inopportune moment here, as he is currently having a little loo break. But that's all part of the adventure here.
This cameraman's just so good.
Hello. Hello everybody. You seem to be back with us rather sooner than you'd planned to be. Sorry about that. And we're still with the lions. I think you lost Scott because he's gone basically as far west as Wendy is able to go. And Tingana is going further than Wendy's bounds, I'm afraid. So we'll have a last look at the lions, just for the final bit of this little drive. And as you can see, they are in fact still totally recumbent on the floor. Were you a Martian to come down to Earth and find this you would probably not rate them as the most terrifying and ferocious predator that Africa has ever known. Well, maybe not ever known, but certainly since the Tyrannosaurus Rex. But as we all know, when they stand up and they're on the hunt, this is the undisputed predator king. So I'm sorry about that crash cut. Like I say, Wendy did disappear, and apparently Tingana was about to relieve himself, so perhaps it was her sort of delicate sensibilities that made her balk at the sight of Tingana relieving himself and brought you back here to these recumbent lions. Trying to follow Brian's lens here with the spotlight. So that wind seems to have dropped now. It's pretty chilly, but not freezing, given my lack of success over the last few days. So, a recap of the day. A wonderful lion sighting this morning with Scott. The lions killed something large last night, probably small wildebeest, small zebra, maybe kudu-sized. They've eaten themselves into oblivion and are going to lie here for the rest of the night, I suspect. They'll probably move around a little bit. So if you are watching the Gowrie Dam cam, keep an eye on it. Then Brian and I had an amazing time with some elephants at Arathusa Dam, and that's again thanks to the great work of the Zoomies and all of you who keep an eye on the Arathusa camera. Thank you for your work. Please understand you are doing valuable conservation work. It may not feel like it, but you are bringing the wonders of Africa to various people in the same way that we are trying to do here. So thank you for your work. Thank you for a great day. Thank you for all your questions and for all your comments. They've been interesting, great, some of them pretty amusing. Thank you to Brian on camera. And a big goodbye from Scott and Viam, the other side, with Tingana. He's had a good time with him. He's had a wonderful first day back. I'm quite jealous of his day. And then thanks also to the XX chromosomes, Tara and Nikki in the final control. We will try and find these lines again tomorrow and see where they've gone. I suspect they won't have gone too far, but you never know out here. So thank you very much for your contributions. Please join us again tomorrow. It'll be Saturday for us. It'll be Friday for some of you and perhaps even Sunday for others. And we will see you in the morning. Good night and thanks a lot.